48 past the hour, the U.S. Surgeon General is calling on Congress to require a warning label on all social media platforms. In a New York Times op-ed, Dr. Vivek Murthy writes that a warning would, quote, state that social media is associated with significant mental health harms for adolescents. Now, it comes amid a rise in teen phone usage and mental health concerns, with teens spending almost 5 hours a day on social media, according to a 2023 Gallup poll. 41% of teens who use social media, the most report, their overall mental health is either poor or very poor. Joining us now, U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy. Doctor, it's really a treat to be able to speak with you. I thank you for your time. And I'm just wondering, if this warning label is enacted, how would it work? What would it look like?
Well, thanks, Jose. And this is an issue I'll just say I care deeply about, not just as Surgeon General, but as a father of 2 young kids. I encounter millions of parents around the country, thousands certainly indirectly in my own travels, who talk to me about how much they're struggling with managing social media for their kids. So I think this has become a near universal struggle for parents. And the reason I'm calling for this label is because what we know from the data is that there's an association between social media use and mental health harms. And specifically, we're seeing that adolescents who are spending more than 3 hours a day on social media experience a doubling of risk of anxiety and depression symptoms. That's pretty significant, especially when we're dealing with a youth mental health crisis in America. A warning label would be a tool that we use to help inform people about that risk, specifically kids and their parents. But I want to be clear that a warning label is one part of a broader set of solutions. Last year, I called for additional steps for Congress to take to actually reduce the likelihood that young people will be exposed to harmful content on social media, to put in place safety standards that would protect them from bullying and harassment and from the kind of features that would seek to lure their developing brains into excessive use, which comes at the expense of sleep and in-person interaction. So all of these measures need to be taken together, but a warning label, which would be a digital label that would appear regularly when you use social media, that would help to inform parents and their kids about the risk. And finally, Jose, keep in mind this. People might wonder, warning labels, do we know if they work or not? Well, here's the good news. We have years of experience from tobacco and alcohol labels that actually tell us these labels are effective in increasing people's awareness and also driving behavior change. They need to be accompanied by other policy measures as well.
And Doctor, one of the things I often think about is in many ways, social media has changed people's brains and it's changed people's way of thinking, right? I mean, there's no need to go to original source materials anymore. You just go and ask, what time was this? There's no, even the concept of how we think, it has changed. Is that something that you think we're condemned to live in?
Well, it's such a good question, Jose, because you're absolutely right that social media has changed some fundamental things about us and how we interact with one another. And in particular, think about our relationships with each other. You and I are having a conversation. We're not in the same room, but we're looking at each other's faces. We're recognizing each other's tone of voice and as well as the content of what we're saying. What social media has done for many kids, though, is it's moved what used to be in-person interactions where you're seeing someone's face and interpreting their body language to online relationships which are often devoid of that content. And I just finished, Jose, a college tour where I traveled around the country to various college campuses, talking to students about the mental health crisis that we're in. And a big part of what's driving that crisis is loneliness and isolation, which I believe are in part being fueled by social media. So many young people said to me on that tour, they said, how are we supposed to build connection with each other when it's not the culture to talk to one another anymore? And I almost thought I misheard that question the first time it was raised to me, but then it came again and again and again. What young people are telling us is that so much of their life is now happening on social media that they're less comfortable with in-person interaction. And it is not, by the way, the same to have online relationships and in-person relationships. In-person relationships are richer. They tend to be much more productive in terms of understanding, in terms of building, a connection where we feel we can be open and vulnerable with one another. That's not to say there's no role for online relationships, but they should supplement, not replace, our in-person interactions.
Yeah. You know, I often think of Jose Ortega Gasset's statement about humanity. He says, I am who I am plus my circumstances. And I'm just wondering, in your specific case, what is it that defines you, and why is it that you care so much and are passionate about the things that you do? Where does that come from?
Well, that's what a thoughtful question, Jose. I think I am primarily defined by my family and by my faith and by my friends. You know, I was blessed to grow up in Miami, Florida, with immigrant parents who loved America, who came here because they wanted their kids to grow up in a country that, you know, looked at people not based on the color of their skin or the sound of their name or the fact that they had an accent, but judged people based on their willingness to work hard to be a part of a community. My parents instilled in me the value that every life matters, that we should care about every human being and seek to lift them up. They didn't just tell me that, they demonstrated that when they built a medical clinic here in Miami, Florida, and then ultimately sought to care for people as human beings, regardless of their background. And that is what my faith tells me as well. So that is what informs me. But I'll tell you in particular on this issue, it's my role as a parent that really guides me here, because I think there is no responsibility we hold that is more sacred than caring for our children. And right now, our children are telling us that they are struggling with the youth mental health crisis. We see in front of us in social media a major contributor to those struggles. And I think even though, yes, I know it's a difficult issue, it's complicated, it requires Congress to act, we've got to, you know, pull ourselves together and to take the action that's needed to protect our kids, because what could be more important than that?
Yeah, nothing. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy, let's continue our conversation going forward. Thank you so much for your time.